Alright, so following the Lunabot, we are actually headed towards again, I think they're called Dani moons, we're about to find out. Yeah, there you go, but it's with a Y, Dayni moons. There we go.
Eh.
And yeah, it is a satellite, not a main planet, which means it has a particular gimmick, a sort of a day-night cycle, but you'll be able to see in just a second. Continuing also the whole thing about let's streamline a lot of things, into each planetoid that Ratchet and Clank visit. Here is where you get a bunch of more mini games for Clank for him to do, even though they have really no synergy with the place. The closest I can say is that some of the combat arena make Clank use a particular robot that resembles a hay pitchfork, but that's kinda it. It's really stretching it. But again, if you want to farm bolts and actually get armor pieces, well, you can do this if you want. But like I said, if I recall correctly, I'm just gonna show the puzzles because again, they're just particularly interesting enough.
Now, if my research hasn't let me down, it seems like the games that are considered the overall black sheeps of the franchise are Deadlocked, Size Matters, Secret Agent Clank, and obviously the 2016 game, essentially. With it seems like Deadlocked is the one that fans are the most acceptable about. And while Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank are the ones that are obviously the one that fans are disgruntled about, but we'll still say at least it's better than the 2016 game, which is ironic since the 2016 game arguably does have good gameplay. It's just
That's just one of the
everything
things of the
else.
franchise as a whole. Even the worst of its games will still be playable in some kind of fashion. That's the thing that you
Pretty
need to
much, yeah.
remember.
It's like,
Unlike things like say the Resistance franchise, where even its worst, cases were also having a problem of not being able to be a joy to play. They still this instead, still has the components of if you want something very arcade-esque, you can actually do it. And speaking
yeah,
of
like
Resistance, in case you're wondering, the music that you're hearing for my speed up is from the San Francisco stage in PlayStation Salvatorial. It's a bit slightly more techno, but this is the music that I was talking about that was in the menu of Resistance 3, but arguably it's actually not that bad to hear, but it's basically tucked away so late into the music cycle that you probably won't even hear it. So it's a waste
mhm,
for basically the one good track of that franchise.
yeah. But yeah, no, like when it comes to Ratchet and Clank, yeah, I don't think there's one series that's ever, sorry, I don't think there's one installment that's ever missed it with the gameplay.
I mean,
And like, yeah,
the closest as people noted might be Secret Agent Clank for a couple of reasons that we'll actually see after we're done with this game. You'll be able to see. But even so, I argue it's a case where because it was built for the PSP, and as a result, it was with the usual idea of playing it in small bursts on the go. Because if there's something that I noticed a lot of times is that a lot of ports, conversions, and similars to games that were on the PSP and by extensions on, say, the Nintendo 3DS, when ported on the PC and regular consoles, have the effect of feeling more of a chore to play because they were intended originally to be played in small moments. Kingdom Hearts, Birth by Sleep, and Dream Not Crystals suffer immensely because of this.
hmm it's one of the things that did come in mind with, having to make games more adept to the portable situation. Now with stuff like the Nintendo Switch, you can basically just put a console game on a handheld and like, oh, somebody's sick of playing it, they can just pause to the home menu basically, and it'll ideally be there as long as the system still has juice. But for handhelds like the Game Boy Advance or the PSP stuff, you needed more of a pick up and play mentality that would allow someone to either save very easily and be able to turn off the system regularly.
Sega actually did do that back in the 90s with the Sega Nomad, which was literally a handheld Genesis. We could literally take your Genesis cartridges and put them on the console. And so the thing is, barely any people bought that thing or even knew about it. So
I guess
I think it may have also
at the very least it manages to get released, unlike the Neptune. But there's also the fact that we have kind of moved, the game industry has basically moved since the traditional making the portable version of titles looking, playing, and being handled significantly different than the home console or PC version. This was talking about the Force Unleashed, the previous part. I played the PSP version of that, and I think it's basically the same as the Wii version. But as instead I mentioned while we were doing the HD version of it, Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands basically has like 4 different versions depending on what you play. The HD version, which we covered, the Wii version, which is completely standalone on its own, same for the PSP version, and the Nintendo DS version that instead has another completely different story altogether, that acts apparently as a sequel to the Two Thrones, apparently.
There's a PSP version of Force Unleashed.
Yes, and I actually did bother to play. It had the distinguished honor of actually one that actually broke my PSP analog stick because of its QTs. Anyway, the gimmick of the Dayni, I guess we'll call that moon, is the fact that during the night cycle the ships become a bit rabid.
They know what you did to them as Spyro, and they want revenge on you as Ratchet.
Honestly, that just reminds me that, the more people need to see the movie Black Sheep.
I missed out on that our first one.
Oh, don't
Maybe
worry,
I'll check in on the
eventually,
Generations
you'll
one.
catch up, don't worry.
But what I was saying earlier was, that reminds me, we really need to eventually get around to checking out the
other different versions.
sequel.
Well,
the sequel to the Prince of Persia, which is on DS, I believe.
That's the Forgotten King, I think it's called. I'm not super in a rush to do it, especially considering the current state of Ubisoft. Who knows? Maybe it's a celebration if they actually end up going down. We'll have to see.
Maybe.
We'll see. All in due time.
But you do raise an interesting point, though. It was interesting how sometimes handhelds didn't just settle for being different versions. Sometimes they were sequels or prequels to the console game counterparts.
They clearly wanted to differentiate them out to justify people actually buying them, and at the same time compensating for the clearly inferior hardware. They wanted to have the cake and eat it too kind of scenario. Also, I'm stuck.
Oh no.
Out of my way, son! Flower stuck!
This is how Ratchet and Clank died, trapped by a flower.
Thankfully, I can easily get out of myself from this situation simply by, if I recall correctly, either using Spartomatic again or whacking the flower, which reverts it to a previous situation. It's similar to the seed puzzle from Spyro 2.
At least the devs did think ahead on that, but what you say regarding handhelds and whatnot, it's part of why my take on Chain of Memories has always been that, first and foremost, that was going to be a Game Boy version of Kingdom Hearts 1, but they later added in narrative differences that would differentiate it, basically, because, again, for the most part, I say for the most part because technically it does have enough of its own original stuff, but for the most part, a lot of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories feels like basically, hey, what if the Kingdom Hearts worlds were basically done on the Game Boy Advance?
Pretty much.
Fun fact, Jupiter, the developers of the GBA version of that game, after that went on to work with the Kingdom team on the first 12.
It's part of the whole thing about the franchise moving to a different direction that you could see, because a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans do not seem to remember this, but I do. That letter at the end that Pluto was carrying at the end of the first game, we never got to know what was in it.
Yeah.
But it was from the king. And
Okay,
that means
you can easily make the
everything.
argument that maybe it's basically the same of what happened, at the end of 2. That was the kind of message that Mickey wanted to convey. But it's basically just left hanging. There's also the big question mark just how the fuck Pluto even works, because he can travel through the dark corridors without any problem. Like, that raises so many questions.
Look,
yeah.
look. We want to talk about Kingdom Hearts losing the plot sometimes. Let's not forget, they still haven't fanged to nominate.
Cool.
Nope. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay, Jova. Namine has rock. Well, no, not right now. But like, she at the very least has a new boyfriend to console her at least. So she moved on.
Enough with Riku and all that. But yeah, no, like. Yeah, that's a thing. The Kingdom Hearts series seems to be a bit off and on how much Soaring Company actually remember Castle Oblivion. Like, obviously, Riku and
by the
Mickey
time of
remember
3,
that.
it's pretty much, that everyone is caught up, basically.
Well, okay, hold on. When it comes to Sora, Donald, and Goofy, obviously their memories were wiped at the end of Chain of Memories, and it's so much so that when
Well, what I mean is, like, if the others have filled them in on what happened in Castle Oblivion.
Remember,
I can answer that.
There's the whole sequence where they had to free Ventus, and they had to go to Castle Oblivion to
Kingdom Hearts
transform it
3.
again to the land.
Remember,
of the
Aqua
beginning.
brings them there. Aqua brings them there in Kingdom Hearts 3. I have somewhere to go. And Sora and Donald and Goofy even add like, oh, what is this place? Oh, it's so Aqua knows so.
Oh, okay,
so
I need to mention this. This upcoming jump kind of demonstrates how the platforming physics of this game clearly were not super developed, because check this out. I have to go down there, so I have to use the flower to actually jump to the high capacity and then move very slowly using the helipack to actually get there. It makes it looks like easy enough, but if I drop the jump right now, I won't land on the actual ground, and instead I will fall down. This jump is very tricky, especially for newcomers, and it's also relatively tight because you do need to use the higher altitude of the flower. I don't know how it was managed to be programmed back then, and keep in mind, waiting for you are 2 of these Technomite soldiers that actually throw rockets that take away a good chunk of your health to boot.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I just want to point this out for Recoded. So, the point of Recoded is to solve the mystery of stuff in the diary, which, obviously, that was a case of being wiped out by Castle Oblivion. I want to point out, it's Mickey, Donald, and Goofy who start off the plot, and Mickey never thinks to tell Donald and Goofy, oh, by the way, you guys were also in capsules there at Castle Oblivion.
Well, I guess, yeah. Maybe he just forgot. I don't know.
Look. I know not to come looking for a perfect narrative at Kingdom Hearts. I still enjoy it. I just also dig poking fun at and critiquing it.
There's also the fact that the mobile game Union X also adds the extra layer of the fact that the trio did travel on their own in the past, but I guess because of the Keyblade World and the world reset, nobody remembers anything from that period. It's weird as shit.
Union X just adds weird stuff.
We're about to actually deal with Luna, which, you know, so far she has been using the harvesting equipment against us. But get this, because I know that Pedro probably didn't also use Java Drips. Have you ever watched Alfred Hitchcock North by Northwest?
No.
Well, too bad. You're getting a reference to that for some reason. See, Guardians of the Galaxy fans, this game did it first before James Gunn.
Huh.
As in a sci-fi context.
Cute.
Okay, I honestly have no idea what's so fascinating about the crop duster scene that gets referenced. Like, maybe I just don't understand the level of cinematography employed. It's probably that. But I don't know how it makes it particular. Like, sure, it's competently made, but I don't know if it was a case of it was the perfect shot that couldn't have been done otherwise. I don't know. But then again, I haven't actually studied about cinematography, so maybe I really am just talking out of my ass.
I like how these
so
aliens
North by
are going to
Northwest-
resort to all the farming tricks just to try and kill us.
North by Northwest came out 1 year before Psycho. Oh, I see. So Alfred Hitchcock decided he kept to keep going back and forth between having his films be in color and in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Cute.
But wait, that was just phase 1. Now you're just stranded on this platform, and you think you'll be able to fight Luna immediately, but no, she wants to be a Dextra dick and start bombarding the platforms with the rock. This can screw you over potentially in challenge mode, because remember, I mentioned sporadically, but it still applies. One hit, and your bolt multiplier goes off. So if you're right here with a 12 plus multiplier, just a single hit from one of the rocks can screw you over. Now, this version actually does add the whole replay functionality, even if I don't particularly care about it, so you can, you know, work with that. But for the original PSP, proper PSV version, this is one of the least replayed levels for that reason. Alright, so it's time for some answers.
The courageous superheroes finally catch the little girl.
We know what you are, Luna.
What we don't know is why.
Oh.
We knew you'd fall for it, Ratchet. You can't resist playing the hero. We just needed to get you to our lab so we could extract your DNA, and this was the easiest way.
Oh, of course, Luna was actually Neo Metal Sonic. It makes sense now.
So get this, apparently the Technomites are tired of their situation and want to take over the universe? Okay.
Ambitious, aren't we?
Not just that, I applaud them for being smart on this. The fact that they understand, yeah, Ratchet is able to kill everything, so let's just clone him. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, you know, make more of the best of the best.
Not to mention, it's a bit ironic because the Technomites are literally technological in nature, but their ultimate weapon is a bioorganic one. But again, that's what we'll be able to see technically in the next part. For now, we have to deal with Luna. Oh, here's a good one. Luna has this attack where she bomb rushes you if the thing is not, you know, spitting out energy. What is the way to telegraph the attack? In the cockpit, whenever she's treadable forward, if you notice, she actually hand waves, you know that. That's not too bad of an idea. For this version, which upscales, you know, the models properly and you're able to see everything. On the original hardware, where everything is more jagged due to the not having much of anti-aliasing, it's not that particularly good to notice, but that's not even the worst part. If you noticed, occasionally she also throws stink bombs. Again, it's supposed to be like a weapon, poisonous gas weapon, but it looks like stink bombs. And their trajectories tend to screw you over because they are very good at following your movement of your strafing. So you need to be literally unpredictable if you don't want to get hurt. Thankfully, it's not too spongy, as you can see, but in challenge mode in particular, this fight is a pain.
Yeah, again, it's easy to think back at the PSP as, wow, the
Also,
superpower hand... Oh,
Jesus, I know that she's a robot,
did.
but Sony giving a first front view of murdering a child.
Construction of this robot is more advanced than
okay,
anything
she
I've
never had a
seen.
soul, so the courts will allow
She
it.
took the factory coordinates with her when we, well, disabled her.
Yes.
believe I may be
Is
able to
nobody in
infiltrate
there,
the lab to
though?
retrieve the
Or are the
record.
aliens inside her
I
dead?
don't know, Clank. Something this advanced must have security programs to keep you from doing that.
I am sure I will have no trouble avoiding whatever security she has installed. Here we go. Past the cerebral shield. Avoid the mainframe intake security protocol. And... bingo.
You got it?
Yes.
No.
The coordinates are...
God damn it.
Now it's Clank's
No.
turn. Oh no.
I got it. Here I come, Clank. Hang on.
Okay,
Now we're playing inside Clyde.
Clank, yes. And now we have James Arnold Taylor talking to himself.
Very slowly. Who are you? I'm Clank security backup.
Yeah, again, knowing what we know in what eventually will be told in A Crack in Time, this also makes no goddamn sense.
I thought you were the damn soldiers that came marching through here. I think they're trying to get
Ratchet and Clank is that kind of series that, on the surface, you'd think would be, oh, goofy, episodic, so it makes sense that things might not be as connected. But no, if you're a fan, you'll know that it has enough of a connected continuity and care for its story that it feels weird when stuff is inconsistent.
You can tell
Also-
that TJ Fixman did not consult with anybody at Bad Games.
Well, remember, it kind of makes sense because up until 2017, the stance that Insomniac did had was that this was not canon to begin with. So they were the studio itself was actually encouraging not to care about it. So, but
It's probably a mentality that they came to regret later on, but
well,
it is what
obviously.
it is.
Well, again, it's kind of a concept with this franchise. I was searching a bit of trivia for All for One since they've started properly playing. To give you an idea of what kind of game it is, it gives you a trophy just for starting the game. Not even kidding. That's a sign of quality. It's not even done in ironic fashion like, say, the Deadpool game does. Deadpool literally makes it a point to just give you 2 trophies right off the get-go and telling you where you got, your dopamine rushing or something like that. The thing that I learned is that originally it wasn't supposed to be developed because, as mentioned, Crack in Time was supposed to be, at least as far as Insomniac was concerned, their final game, but because it was critically acclaimed and sold a lot, and because at that point Sony had kind of been screwed over itself and had left that as their only primary cartoony platforming, with only a minor one-offs like Puppeteer being a thing, they told Insomniac to do more Ratchet and Clank games, and honestly, considering how Resistance was going, yeah, they probably had, that was their saving grace. So they did that, but then there was more executive meddling, which extended to the point of the title, which I will not say now, because it's actually best if I enjoy it right on the moment. But needless to say, the original title of All for One was supposed to be basically the most innuendo of a pun that Insomniac wanted to do, and that was the point where Sony was like, yeah, no, don't do that. So it took them up until like the 8th, I think, game in the franchise before they actually stepped on them, and for the American release, mind you, because as mentioned, the European titles, non-English ones, well, sometimes, tend to actually properly change them. Anyway, we're inside the properly Clank, and as the security guard told us, we need to actually deal with the Technomites inside, and as you can see, it's all about journey to the center of the body kind of experience. Again, on a physical hardware level, this is still believable because you have to remember Clank is Blargian manufactured. It was supposed to be based around the robot model. The retcons applied in A Crack in Time regard the kind of quote-unquote power level and internal software that Clank is supposed to be having. But again, since we're not taking it there yet, we're just basically assuming with what the first game did.
I guess I'm a bit surprised it took 5 games before Ratchet finally made his way inside of Clank.
Ew.
Well, look, they finally have reached a level in their relationship where this can be considered healthy.
I'm not sure this is a 7 max-like situation. As actual level design is concerned, this is actually fine, better than what you experienced through the honeymoon. And in case you're wondering, similar to Ratchet's Nightmare, you can revisit this later, because as you will be seeing after we're done with this, after exiting Clank, Luna's corpse is still there. Again, I know she's a robot, a machine and everything, but it's still kind of morbid. And by examining that, you can return inside Clank. Again, much like with Ratchet's Nightmare is him going back to the medical bed.
That implies that Clank tries to insert, and that causes him to go on the fritz, and as a result, Ratchet's got to do it all over again.
Also, in case you were wondering, the only one instance in the entire game where that air current mechanic with Ratchet, flopping around model is actually used. They did it just for that one occasion, without that much, variation. It's basically a very scripted event. Not sure why they wasted time with that.
This definitely reeks of we plan to use it more, but we didn't account for how it might not be the most fluid on a handheld.
The PSP's biggest weakness, in my opinion, was the lack of a second analog stick for camera control. Because doing most of the stuff on just one analog stick, now to use the shoulder buttons for the camera movement,
yeah, very awkward.
It's really awkward.
Again, some games. This is why RPGs tended to thrive a lot, because all of them did not require a moving camera, and instead were either tactical ones, like say Disgaea or Jeanne d'Arc or Final Fantasy Tactics, or even Tactics Ogre. But while others were the traditional pixel turn-based, fare, like the ports of Final Fantasy 1 and 2, for example, or Astonish Story, that's a topic for another time. So that's someone tried to circumvent that, but remember, this game in particular was done to try to give the experience of a traditional Ratchet & Clank game, just, on a portable format. And yeah, what we've said rings true. The lack of a second analog stick for the camera hurts it a bit. Thankfully, this emulated version, since it accommodates for the DualShock, similar to a lot of PSP games did accommodate it for the DualShock 3, allows you to use the second analog stick in place to move the camera left and right, but that's pretty much it. It's still better than, just awkwardly maneuver it on your own, but it's noticeable, the difference, yes.
Mm-hmm. I want to be clear and fair and say this. This definitely looks like one of the better examples of a series making the jump from a PlayStation console to PlayStation handheld, because, trust me, it could be a lot worse.
Well, then there were just the ones that tried to actually take advantage of the minimal amount of buttons by having a very, very weird control scheme. I'll talk about that when we get to the dedicated section in Astrobot Jova, but let's just say that if you never played the Loco Roco games, that's just seeing the gameplay alone, you wouldn't really expect what kind of control scheme it kind of has. Because you see just the blob moving around, so you're like, oh, it's the D-pad or the analog stick, and you just use the face button to do stuff. No, it's technically different than that. But again, more another time.
And then there's the Metal Gear Acid duology, which feels like it was made on acid.
Well, that's the plot-wise. Gameplay-wise, they refer to what I said about tactical RPGs, where the camera is fixed most of the time, or you don't really need to move it that much. Again, that is taking advantage of the hardware, which I understand.
That is true. A more apt comparison would be Portable Ops, which did try more so to replicate the console game. Yeah. And those ones I feel worked out for the most part.
We're actually close to the restoring properly Clank a bit, but there's something that we have not properly, fixed yet. His heart. Yeah, that's apparently Clank's heart, and it emits radioactive energy. That can't be good. So what
how
we
Insert-
how is Ratchet not dead after being exposed to that?
Well,
Don't
I'm
you
pretty-
see, Dweebs?
I do
Clank
want
can't-
the armor, I guess. There you go, you need to use the polarizer to gather the pieces and literally slot them in. Again, another one-time only mechanic that probably was going to be used more.
You see, guys, Clank can't bear to hurt Ratchet. That's why his heart doesn't kill him.
There you go.
Or insert Wizard of Oz joke.
Thankfully, after being repaired, the heart does not, put more shockwaves.
Mm-hmm.
Great work. Now, stand back, son. You better get out of here before the automatic virus detection program comes online and hunts you down.
Oh, lovely.
So yeah, time to skedaddle.
Especially because we're kind of done with the Technom. The security guard is not wrong. We kind of did defeated all the Technomites that are in the level, so when it comes to the challenge outside of platforming is the, as mentioned, the automatic detection virus. That's actually kind of neat as an integration mechanic.
Should I be concerned that Clank has stores inside of him?
Well, again, it's part of the whole. Just looking at the satire angle, the whole thing about Gadgetron has tendrils everywhere, so they can make sure that you buy their products all the goddamn time. So
in the future, stores will be able to inject themselves into our bloodstream.
you say that, Jova, but I would like to remind you that a few years ago, with the whole NFT craze, there were people who genuinely believed that the way the direction was going, people were going to literally eventually be having their conscience digitized for the fucking metaverse and shit. Thank God we avoided that.
Priceless timeline.
And for all I know, maybe there's still, a lot of people in the Silicon Valley still wants to head for that direction. Hope I'm not gonna be alive to see that happen.
No, Tio, that's the thing. Even if you're dead, they'll bring you back with it.
Oh, so instead it's, remind me again, Weaves, what was the name of that, the project that the Cybermen had, where they wanted to use the souls of the dead to create new Cybermen for the future for the Master?
Oh yeah, that was in the episode.
They fucked over the Colonel? I forgot his title.
The Brigadier.
The Brigadier, there you go, yes.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest moments of poor taste in the show's history, because bear in mind they killed off the Brigadier character because his actor passed away, and not 3 years later they did that shit.
Okay, just to give an idea, let me
Basically, Jova, imagine if they killed off Phoenix right, but then a few years later they bring him back as like a what's the one thing Phoenix hates?
Criminals?
Yeah, they bring him back in the body of a criminal. But
anyway,
yeah, that wouldn't go down very well, I don't think.
Well, actually, Dweebs, I think a more apt comparison. Let me put it in perspective, actually, as a matter of time. Okay, remember what happens in Metal Gear Solid 1, where one of your big twists is that Master Miller was dead all along and Liquid had usurped him. But because you really did not have much experience with the guy, it just is something that really catches you off guard. Imagine if, instead, hypothetically, the games did let you play chronologically, starting also with parts of the prequels, including the Big Boss Saga, where he does meet Master Miller and the player gets to know the character more like. That's the kind of way you feel it. the way where when a character gets suddenly killed off screen, you know, and he's treated as part of a twist in order to hype up the villain.
Well, it's important to remember that when Kojima wrote Metal Gear Solid, he made it with continuity with the previous two games in mind. Like, so he expected people to already go in with knowledge of Master Miller's character.
I keep forgetting that he did that a role in MG2, right?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Like we, the West, yes, us Westerners, most of us at least, got into Metal Gear through the first Solid game. But in Japan, the first two Metal Gears were really popular.
You're right. I just forgot. I'll think of a better example.
Yeah, in Japan, everybody knew who Master Miller was by the time Solid came out.
Okay, I think I can think of a good example. This would be like, I'm guessing it'd be like if Chris Redfield was killed, but then later he's brought back and his body is possessed by the spirit of Albert Wesker, now back for yet again another complete global saturation.
Close, but considering what they did to the Brigadier and the Cybermen, it would be instead like if Chris's body is used to create another Nemesis-esque Titan.
I'm not as familiar with Doctor Who, so I'm guessing the Brigadier was a very well-beloved character as well.
Yeah, and one of the more recurring, beloved, and actually important supporting characters. Again, it's a bit wonky because by nature the continuity with episodes of Doctor Who is constantly fluctuating due to how the timeline keeps getting changed over and over and over again.
But yeah, it's a double whammy. Moffat kind of did the Brigadier dirty. But also, that apparently was meant to be like a loving tribute to the guy.
Well, it's not the first time where we see content creators of some kind trying to have a love letter to something, but, advertently or inadvertently ending up screwing over.
Oh my God.
So the ending of Star Trek Enterprise.
Wait. Actually, I've got the perfect comparison. This is like when back in Season 3 of Transformers Gen 1... before they actually did bring back Optimus Prime for real, they hinted that they would be bringing back Optimus Prime, and they did, but he was brought back as a terrifying zombie who was now evil.
All right,
which just traumatized kids even more.
What happened?
Proportions, there you go.
You got short-circuited when you interface with Luna.
She must have had a level 9 access protocol installed, which activates retroactively.
Nerd speaking, am I right?
That's where you broke out. You said you found the clone factory coordinates.
Accessing? Yes, I do have them. I cannot believe I was stupid enough to make such a simple mistake.
It happens to the best of us, pal. The important thing is...
And it gave me another level to play through.
Right.
Yeah, come to think of it, the inside of Clank had a lot of bolts too, begs a lot of questions.
Clank, you're feeling fine despite all those bolts I took, right? And yeah, Luna's just left there to, lie dead.
Wait, there were bolts inside of me?
There were bolts also inside Ratchet's nightmare, so whatever. Capitalism, unfortunately, has its tendrils everywhere in this universe.
So basically, Ratchet, you committed robbery from inside my own body.
Well, I don't know. It didn't seem like you're able to really use them.
Anyway, tune in for the next part, where, as mentioned, we're going to Quadrona, what a name, to stop the cloning factory and defeat, and while confronting properly, Emperor Otto Destruct. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.